Calling Parks and Recs meeting to order. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Scott, can you please read roll?
Clark.
Here.
Corvino is absent and excused. Ermeling. Here. Isker is absent and excused. Wyland.
Here. Okay, let's see. Any, approval for minutes from previous meeting, March 25th, 2024. Motion by Ermeling.
Second.
Second by Clark. Motion's been approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any more in discussion? Opposed, motion passed. Any public comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody online?
I was like, what? No. No.
Just asking.
I know there were a couple emails sent. I don't know if those are read off at all from Sarah at all or. No, okay.
To you?
I believe to you. No, I could be wrong, but.
Yes,
okay,
no,
I could be wrong. Number 6, discussion and possible action, Kennedy Park marketing proposals.
So we sent out the RFP for the marketing proposals for the Kennedy Park fundraising campaign. We got 2 responses, one from G Morty and one from Baker Street Consulting Group. As you could see, if you read through the packet, G Morty is ready to go with a marketing campaign. And Baker Street is recommending a feasibility study. So the reason for the feasibility study is to determine if our fundraising goal is feasible in the area, based on the group being combined, which we know all the groups are together right now, but just in general, the area, if they would support this. And we know that grant applications through the Community Foundation or Green Neck Foundation will not raise funds that are needed. That's going to have to be a gift or a donation by somebody, not necessarily outside of those groups, but could be inside those groups to reach that number. So it's really 2 different proposals. There's a marketing one and there's a feasibility study. We did get, as Jamie stated, emails from a committee member and from one of the fundraising committee members, Sarah and Dino, with recommendations to work with G Morty, familiarity with the village, work with them before, focusing on the goal for what we're looking for, not another study. There's a very important meeting on the 28th of May that we would like to have some materials ready for, for the fundraising committee to be in front of the Community Foundation. So it's an invite only. There's only 3 invited. Well, Jamie was at the meeting. There's only 3 invited for that meeting, and they get 15-20 minutes to present in front of them to put out a request in front of the board for the Community Foundation.
So they would like the materials now and not
They would like,
long-term study.
they would like some materials, obviously, prior to the meeting on the 28th. Not everything will be ready probably, but they would like to have something ready to present besides the master plan and the current cost estimate, because that's all they have right now.
And right now, G Morty has the phases all laid out along with dates, so that'll help in that meeting as well if you go with them.
Yep. Any questions about either proposal or thoughts? I did talk with Baker Street about their, and they said, well, you're going at it the wrong way, there's one more step, feasibility study. And Jamie's been in a couple meetings where Dino's like, what do we need that for? It's literally, they're trying to figure out the whole area, what's feasible, the radius. And we're gonna pay for that. We're gonna pay for the whole area to be determined if there's enough funds. And we know that this could be a big goal, but you know, you get the right person on board and it's definitely a possibility. And them doing a study, which we've been through this before, we did a feasibility study for the sports complex. Is that reasonable goal? We know there's gonna be more funds that have to be invested from the village in the future, not just what's been dedicated already. Which are already at, you know, the 766,000, I think that was at the last meeting, at the last village board meeting. That was dedicated to it, which covers the marketing, the drafting of the plans for building, and then possibly a portion and towards the actual construction of phase 1.
And JP Morty has also done fundraising awareness for United Way, Mount Gardens, Boys and Girls Club, Neighbors Place. So. Yeah, I would like to use somebody that's worked with us in the past, because we already have a relationship with them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really see a point in doing a feasibility study.
Okay, I move to recommend the proposal from G Morty and the readers.
Okay, motion by Ermeline.
Second.
Second by Clark. Motion's been approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any more in discussion? Opposed, motion passed. Discussion and possible action requests for proposals for Kennedy Park Survey Engineering Design Services.
So Michael put together a RFP for the survey and engineering, which is basically the plans we built work off. I talked to him today and stated that we have the necessary maps as far as the sewer, water, storm sewer for Kennedy Park, which would be an instrumental part in the RFP. So based on if the RFP is okay with you guys, plus the additional maps, we could literally get it out. And we know there's a timeline here, which I put in the RFC, which is, you know, we'd like to get this bid out, get it awarded, and then get the documents drafted so we can actually bid out the actual construction of at least phase 1. Because we have to have signed documents by the end of this year. With construction taking place and everything paid out by 2026. So Michael's the one to put it together because he does this technical stuff, which is constructing these big plans. We've looked at it. Jamie looked at it. I looked at it. I sent it out to everybody. So you all see it previously. And if we're ready to release it. And the other maps are just, like I said, sewer, water, storm sewer of Kennedy Park, so they can plan around what's existing.
Yeah, and a lot of that's just to give information to the firms initially so they can kind of understand what, how much effort and I guess, yeah, level of detail they're gonna need to put into their final plan set. So when we ask them for a number, they kind of know what the existing system is that they're working around. And especially with the phasing portion of this, I think it's really important that we have a good design plan created. So, you know, when we build this building or that parking lot or that field, it's at the right elevation, it's in the right spot. So the following year or 2 years later, when we go to build that next thing, all of a sudden we don't end up with, you know, a weird grade change or something's overlapping because you know, the wrong control point was used. So now, you know, the backstop has to be, you know, 10 feet closer to home plate, or, you know, we start having to mess around with some of the various items because it's not quite laying out right. So making sure we have that, I think is a good practice to have, and we'll make it cleaner and hopefully a little more seamless as the phased construction takes place.
And as far as the buildings, we try to keep it broad and just try to get a footprint, not the actual architectural drawings for specific facility. So, you know, could be the, you know, facility in the northwest corner, could be concession, bathroom, you know, scorekeeper, announcer area, you know, restrooms, et cetera. Because we thought those were more detailed plans as far as the actual facilities. And we know that they we're not sure what type of materials they put in the master plan cost estimate, but we wanted to at least have them put the footprint in and not actually design the building.
Yeah, and the user groups will likely have a little more, they'll probably want a little more say in how something looks. And I guess that's maybe not so much up to us to predetermine what that design looks like. But as long as we get the square footage of, which is in kind of the master plan already, as far as how much area those buildings should take up, we'll always make sure that footprint is reserved. And the utilities to those facilities will be there. So water, sewer lines primarily.
And we actually did get like a building footprint for the hockey area already from them. Which is, they got a cost estimate, they're just under $1 million with their concrete building, et cetera. Electrical lights inside. So they're just under $1 million right now. I did send them a message just offering suggestions to what they actually sent us, because they have no walls on it at all. It's just hockey boards and some, you know, glass on the ends. And Mike, you have to deal with sun, you have to deal with snow blowing in, so snow removal, et cetera. Stuff we've looked at before when we've done this is like number 3 from hockey. And they're like, yeah, good idea, put a wall on the south end. You know, take sun out of it, because they want at this time. So we could literally start in December and go through March. But if the sun's involved, and you have to have a place to remove snow, because snow's still gonna come in there. So they're looking at that right now too. But they're just under $1 million.
That's one proposal that we already have.
That, yeah, so they had North draw plans for that portion of it, just to make sure. I mean, we have a cost estimate in the master plan, but they want actual numbers from a company, so.
And then any other proposals, those are due May 17th.
No, so we have not put out the RFP for the construction documents, which we just talked about. And then we'll get actual numbers on construction of like phase 1 or phase 2. And because we currently have cost estimates. So, I mean, and you know, through a lot of discussion, we know some costs are inflated, some are probably under, but we should be able to get closer numbers. You know, when Jimmy and Sarah were here at the last meeting, they figured they could build phase 1, build restrooms for 600,000, 700,000, which would, you know, fit within what was already dedicated to the project with the money that was authorized at the last board meeting. So based on not the $1 million that was in there, and that's village contributing grading, excavating, prepping the site, etc. So, we don't really know until the numbers come in though, till we actually can bid it out. And that's, part of the, getting out the surveying engineering RFP. Then we should get better numbers. And hopefully they're all close, reasonable. I mean, not, 200,000 different than the other, but, once we get those back, then we should have some idea, once we get the actual design documents, then we can bid it out for actual construction.
Bid it out or use our resources.
Correct, yeah, I mean, so either way, we need to have those plans, so if we wanna start, doing some removals on our own, we still need to know where what, the limits are, how much material to remove or add in, so, yeah.
Move to recommend the RFP.
Motion by Clark, second by Ermeling. Motion's been approved. All in favor, say aye. Any more in discussion? Opposed? Motion passed. Number 8, discussion on naming rights.
So this came from the last meeting. We talked about that being a step. So the naming rights group or the fundraising group had some parameters basically for going out there and getting sponsorships or naming rights for fields. So I included Herb Falls, Stevens Point, Wassa, both their sponsorship and naming rights. And then just some direction on where you want to go, like something you saw within one or the other or all that we should include. Wassa does a sponsorship 3 years, so like People's State Bank soccer facility, it's a 3-year deal. East Bay had it before. Is that direction you want to go? Is it a 3-year thing? Is it if you contribute half, there's another one in here. If you contribute half of the initial cost to build the facility, is it forever? So if you're building Diamond 1, we know it's going to be $600,000-$700,000 to $1 million. If you contribute half the price, is that good forever? Or is it, 3 years? For what's that dollar amount? 50,000, or whatever it is. For naming rights. So they do 2 different things, sponsorships and naming rights. There's 2 different policies in there. Some make it easy, and I started grabbing pieces that I liked out of each one to draft the policy, but I didn't want to go too far if it's something you don't see or want. So the sponsorship one is first from Marathon County. And it's something they do annually, it's every year. And as you can see on the last page, they already have a main sponsor for the soccer facility and a main sponsor for the playground at the facility. So it's filled, they're both filled, and they go, like I said, 3 years, $3,000 a year. So is it 2 different things? So you have naming rights for this dollar amount and then sponsorships after that.
I kind of like I kind of like the idea of having it for a period of time instead of forever, but that's me.
Like I said, it's all depends, like, so if somebody decides to sponsor $300,000, instead of $3,000 a year for 3 years, set a time limit on it, or is it just 3 years, $3,000 a year? There's a lot of variables. And that's why we don't wanna draft a policy and say,
Well, there could be different tiers too, you know,
Yeah.
depending on what kind of
and we have lots of options.
response we get.
There's lots of options. You could, you know,
I mean, if they will,
sponsor
they'll
the
make
back,
it.
you could sponsor,
Yeah, your name comes all over it.
yeah, you could sponsor the backstop, the fencing, the batting cages, playgrounds. I mean, there are lots of options. Depends on what you want to put out there. Playground sponsors. You know, we know not restrooms, but you know, I mean.
I would
So-
totally sponsor the restroom. I just,
See, I'm with you. I'm all about a good day.
everybody's gonna be in the restroom at least once.
The porta potties are out.
So, I
pointed
mean,
to him today, I'm like,
Plumbing
next year, don't
outfitters.
worry.
you know,
But-
the main announcer booth concessions, you know, I mean. If you've read through it, like I said, there's one that says if you sponsor half of the initial cost to build it. Or, you know, I mean, we want to do a multi-year, or it spreads out the costs, because we know this is a multi-year project. Or is your goal just to say, hey, we're fundraising for phase one. Fuel's gonna cost 700,000. If you give us 350, that's your field for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is.
I don't read it that way and it's in Wausau's. I read it because it says value of the park land dedication. I don't view it as a field. I view it as the total project is up to 14 million. You would be 7 million. Well, you'd be slightly over 7 million. And then the entire park would be named that. And I do like how Wausau has it outlined because you have to meet other criteria as far as having civic service in the community, having been a resident for a certain amount of time. And it also says meeting the guidelines does not guarantee that the name would be approved. So if you're gonna name it the entire park land, I think you want it, that's something you're not gonna change, right? We haven't changed the name of Kennedy Park since it was dedicated. But the fields, yeah, I also like the way that they have it 3 years, a certain dollar amount. The banners at the pool, the banners in the
Infield
infield,
or outfield.
outfield, but
It's really two different things. So you have naming rights and sponsorships.
yes, yeah,
So naming rights, I think, would be the larger dollar amount.
yes.
I mean, that'd be like kind of like the Green Heck Turner Center, like the
Mhm.
Green Heck coming in
Green Heck
saying,
Field.
I want to give you $10 million to go build this. I think you'd have a hard time saying, okay, well, in 3 years, we might rename it something else, but we'll take that.
It's always gonna be Green Heck Turner.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, Steam Stadium was Steam Stadium, and then all of a sudden, what happened? And
still
they
Steam
named the field,
Stadium. Yeah, at Stephenhagen Field at Steam
and
Stadium.
now it's Stephenhagen Field at Steam Stadium. It wasn't a name before that. They just split it apart and said Steam and Stephenhagen. You know, where you could still do that. Like, if you had a sponsor for half the cost of this, it could be Target Park, you know what I mean? And then split it apart to this field is Green Neck Field.
Where did Friends of Kennedy Park come in? Was that?
So that's kind of the unofficial name of the fundraising group.
Mhm.
So for applications, it's Friends of Kennedy.
Friends of the
Sounds-
Kennedy Park Renovation Project
Yeah,
is the term that's being used with the community foundation.
it's kind of unofficial because Sarah sent 3 different names.
I like that one. That's.
That's the one that is signed up. So
Oh, for
That group
Community
is-
Foundation,
that
yeah,
group is signed up with the community foundation to be their fiscal agent.
yeah. So she sent like 3 different names initially. But that was the one that we talked about at the last meeting. That's Friends of Kennedy Park.
So that's good type.
Friends of the Kennedy Park Renovation Project.
Yes.
Yeah.
or revitalization projects, something like
So
that.
both, the DC Everest baseball and hockey approved, partnership with them for the pass-through fund.
And softball too,
Did softball approve it? I
think so.
got an email from hockey and, well, I was at the meeting for baseball, so.
I think softball did too. And then the school district's in on that group as well.
Yeah.
WASA also, they break it down as far as individuals versus groups and organizations. You know, so whether it would be the name of an individual on the park or if it would be an organization. The different criteria for naming. Have we done much on sponsorships before? The way that it's listed out here with a,
No.
No.
No. And Barb's been around. And our naming stuff has been controversial every time. So Mock Miller Park, it was controversial.
Still is.
Jaeger Prairie on the trail. Controversial. I mean, because it was, I mean, Sharon's still alive, named after Sharon Yeager. Has passed away, but Kresge's, the owners of Weston Tile, was involved in that. They literally want to donate, you know, the sign and be part of that. And he was the former president or, you know, or of the village, Vilas was, so, I mean, but so the naming thing has never been, there's never been a policy on how we do it. And, you know, and there's multiple ones in here on how they actually do that, so. And they go through steps, how to do it, and Jamie mentioned a bunch of it is literally how they contribute to the community, how long they lived here, you know, and that's part of the Irv Jones thing. I look back, it was 2002 when he passed away. We talked about investigating it a little bit, and I still can't find anything on an actual donation to the village for the naming of those fields.
I can't remember the exact particulars to it, but he did contribute or like the dugouts and, I mean, he was very big into something with it, and I can't remember anymore what it was, but that was, I think it was named when he was still alive.
No, he had passed away.
Eddie? Okay.
Yep, and Michael, I have to point you out because he was a coach of Michael's at some point during baseball. And like I said, I tried to look back, it was 2002 when he passed away. And tried to find some minutes or something that reflected that they actually made a donation to the village for the naming rights. But I didn't find anything in this book.
I think it was more some kind of honorary for, if he was a coach or if he was a whatever. I mean, that was pretty much done by the park.
Yeah, I mean, he was a very involved individual with youth sports throughout my youth, but I guess
So are
that's.
you?
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I know Roger had been super involved with his kids, and you know, I guess that's maybe where we start running into some of these things is for a, you know, a 10-15 year window, certain individuals are gonna be super dedicated. And then their kids aren't there anymore, and then the next wave of parents comes through, and I think that starts getting a little tough when you're memorializing, which is great. Maybe we create a wall of fame or something where you do recognize and honor those people that came before and helped establish that, but I don't know if, you know, naming fields or stuff like that, but more or less just a way to try to, what do I call it? You know, it's kind of like that history, right?
Their contribution to the.
Yeah, acknowledge that contribution, acknowledge the time, the commitment, you know. Because we had a couple of people recently whose kids aged out. I think Jamie Reimer had been involved for what, almost 20 years in youth baseball, between his several kids. You know, you have people that have put a lot of time and effort into, maintaining these programs and, it's, you want to be able to dedicate that and but then we have one that nobody can understand how or why that one. Yeah, Irv passed away, but sometimes it's nice to be honored while you're still here too. So I think we have a couple benches that have been donated in memory of people too.
Yep.
I think there's a rock.
So
The rock is Irv.
So the rock is Irv Jones. It's a rock with a plaque, big
Yeah.
bronze plaque. That's what happened when Irv Jones passed away. We have, most recent, we had a bench from donated from Hetty Yeager, from Yeager Auto Salvage. She passed away a couple years ago. Watched her kids, grow up and grandkids playing at Kennedy Park. Obviously a huge part of the community. How long has Yeager Auto Salvage been around? Barb, longer than you?
Around a lot of years, because it was actually a farm, my friend, her in-laws owned the property and they sold it to them. So
Yeah, it's been around a long
Around
time.
60
Obviously,
years.
we talked about it here at community level, before it happened. But like Michael said, I mean, my son was in baseball 10 years, my youngest. I coached for 9. I mean, that's 10 years. I mean, Irv could have been 10 years too, and he had 2 sons. But there's people that have done more than that. I have my older son, I was also involved back then too. But he's, 13 years older than my youngest, so it's just determining what that goal is as far as setting those parameters, because there's a lot of people that contribute, and spend time. And I mean, baseball's always wanted to do something where they don't have a trophy room. They don't have space to put all the trophies that all the groups have won. So they're all over the place. But just recognizing the people involved, volunteers, they're all volunteers and spend time in it. But, what are those parameters gonna be as far as, like naming rights, if it's a donation, or if it's naming rights based on, somebody that contributed to the community. Could be 2 different things. It could be, a sponsorship at this level, but naming rights at this level, just because their contribution to the area, the park, the sport.
So in a perfect world, if we got all the money from one person, then we could possibly use that, as the naming right and name the park after that. And we have to maintain the fields, right? So maybe we could have like an interchangeable sponsorship sign and have it at those levels, and then use that money towards maintaining the fields.
And I think
And
that's
I have-
really the goal.
Maybe have a wall of fame, like you said, with the coaches, you put in, 5+ years, 10+ years, I don't know.
They have one at Steam,
Yeah,
on the outside there,
right, something
their
like that,
plaques.
know.
And I think that's the goal, like if you get, Scott Turner, to donate naming rights for the entire facility, and then you have target field at Kennedy Park, or Greenhead Park, or Turner Park, whatever it is. You could still name the playground like they do here, the playground, the fields, batting cages. And then, put plaques out there. And then if you want to do it on a 3-year rolling basis, where they sponsor it for 3 years, and you should hold it over 3 years.
We make our own signs here, so that's not a problem.
So. And maybe Sean, I don't know if this is a question for you. So would we keep, I'm guessing we would still keep Kennedy Park, but maybe it's like the
Complex
sports complex,
at Kennedy Park.
the Osterbrinka Sports Complex at
Yeah.
Kennedy Park. So then you got 3 layers of, said Falkowski Field, Osterbrinka Complex at Kennedy Park. Right.
Yeah, so I literally whittle it down to, what do you think, like, Kennedy Park's gonna stay, right? It's always gonna be Kennedy Park.
Well, it wasn't always, but yeah.
but it's always gonna be Kennedy
Yeah.
Park, right? I mean,
I don't see why we would change
Yeah, no.
we have a signed picture from JF Kennedy.
that.
We do.
Where is
When we
it?
named it, where is it?
Old park
It's
shops.
over at the old park building.
Maybe
Um,
we should grab that.
It's pretty historic. It's pretty old. It's pretty
It used to be junk.
dated.
Yeah, why is it
Um,
at the old building?
Name the fields.
It's our original office that we had there.
Yeah. Name the fields, name the batting cages, name the playgrounds. I mean, whatever it is, you're okay with that, right? The announcer booth, the, the restrooms, concessions in the middle. Like, you're okay with naming pretty much everything or sponsoring everything? Okay.
Give us money.
Yeah, right? That's a lot.
We know there's future costs. And that's like what they're doing in Marathon County, sponsorships. So $3,000 a year for 3 years. Sponsors the field, but if the money actually goes towards maintenance, obviously helps cover that cost. Which is the goal, I think, for us. But do you want to set a goal for naming rights for the facility?
Hold it, they can name it.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanna predetermine a
No,
dollar amount.
I don't think a dollar amount, but just like. Like I said, there's one in here that's 50+% for naming rights. But
Do we have to determine this right now? Can we?
well, I think it's to help the fundraising group determine what they can ask for.
But I think for tonight, we just were looking for a little direction and I think we're hearing,
Because we didn't draft policy yet.
yeah, that naming, you'd like to see a naming rights policy and a sponsorship policy. With the idea that naming rights wouldn't be to rename the park, but the sports complex. If someone wanted to provide a larger dollar amount. I don't dislike WASA's 51% piece. I'm sure that they've had this conversation before, right? Like that they've come up with that 51%, but it could be any percentage. But I think that's what I'm hearing. You'd like to see the sponsorship, an annual commitment, maybe for a certain amount of term, but those things would change over every 3 or so years.
Somebody lives across from Scott, so. And I've known Scott since the 90s.
I think you have better access than.
yeah, I mean, depending on, say if somebody comes up and says, I'd like to sponsor, say we have a policy of 3, they came and say, well, I'd like to sponsor it for 5 years, I guess. That I would, do we look at stuff like that?
I think we say our sponsorship is for 3 years and you can sponsor again in 3 years. Because the other piece is you're locking in a dollar amount based on the cost of maintenance and the cost of maintenance is gonna increase every year. So locking in for 3 kind of makes sure that you're building that,
Right.
what that cost input is.
Yeah, and pretty much all of our agreements, sessions, beverage agreements, it's all been 3 years. I mean, because you don't know what's gonna happen in 1 year. But, in 3 years, you hopefully get to that point where you know how it's working, how the relationship works. And if they're gonna continue, because East Bay switched in a short time, and East Bay is a national company. People State Bank soccer complex, they're local, and they took it over. But we thought East Bay, big contribution, would have it for a long time. They didn't have it for long.
What I like about the way that WASA has their naming rights policy is it does say meeting the guidelines doesn't guarantee approval because I think it's important to have a policy in case you get an offer. So you have some guidelines to review, but then it still comes back to park and to board if this is what you really wanna do.
And do you want something in there that says we don't necessarily have to maintain it in perpetuity? I mean, we would, but, you know, I don't think you necessarily have to if we're doing like 3 years.
Right.
Where you run into that with like a bench. You know, where they donate a wood bench and then 20 years from now, you know, we shouldn't maintain it anymore. It should be removed and disposed of. Because you're buying a new bench to replace it, which is new money. It's not what they paid for. Just a thought, I mean,
Well, we could write something in, I know we have the piece about memorials, but we could write into these policies that these are, the sponsorships are for very specific things. The naming is for park. Things like benches or amenities would be something different. Yeah, so if you want to provide an amenity to the park, you know, we could list out what, some criteria around that.
right,
And add the pieces that the amenity will be kept as long as in good shape and can be, you know,
Maintained in
yeah.
a safe manner.
And becomes the property of the village once donated for us to,
Yeah,
So
so
that's-
also like a life expectancy on it,
yeah.
yeah, so that's what I brought it up because
a
the
useful life.
memorial. Kennedy for 2017 is because, you know, there's no guarantees that it could be destroyed, right? And then what? They did give us $2,000 in maintenance for the future, but it's worth way more than that. So, and now they're talking about moving the memorial from current Metro building, possibly to Kennedy Park or somewhere else, where we have to expand upon it. You know, because they want a place that's gonna always be there. Hopefully Kennedy Park's there forever, right? So,
Well, after this, I believe it's gonna be a staple park.
but yeah, so there's a memorial and a memorial bench at the safety building, and since Everest Metro is moving, where do they put that? You know,
I mean, it's still gonna be our building.
yep. So just trying to get specific ideas for the policy, and Jamie's writing notes, so.
What did Dino have to say?
He didn't say nothing about that.
Really?
But we're early in the stages. Of course, we'd like to have something drafted for you for next meeting, because like I said, they have a meeting on the 28th, Community Foundation. And then, you know, they're ready to go. So we, you know, give them some parameters as far as what they can do. Like I said, one of the directives was to look into the Herb Jones thing. And I'll be doing some more research, but
For whatever, like I said, I cannot but it seemed to me like Little League wasn't real big in this area, and he had a lot to do with getting it, you know, a little more up and going and whatever.
That might have been when RSW merged with Cronenwater. To create that, because when I was first started, it was RSW, it was just Rothschild, Schofield, Weston, and Cronenwater had their own league. By the time I was done, it was all one. But, yeah, I mean, Don Penza was super involved with Little League at the time too. I think he was actually the commissioner or the league president, so. And we
And
don't have anything
something
named
about
after
dugout
Don.
just keeps hitting in my head, and I don't know why. I can't, you know.
I remember Don Penza, so tells you how young Michael was. I was working here already at that point, so
Well, Don was also on our park, I thought he was on our park committee at one point.
briefly.
Yeah. And that was when I was working here already, so I mean, it's not like He was never around. But I was in between his youngest kid was a year older than me.
But I like the idea of the sponsorship. 3-year and then.
Probably just bigger items though, right?
Right. Yeah, you do. Do a water fountain or something.
And if they sponsor more than
What fee?
50%, that would give them naming rights? Is that where we're at? too?
No, naming rights would only be associated with a whole piece of parkland. So you would have to do all of Mock Muller, you'd have to do all of Kennedy, you'd have to do all of Williams. It's gotta be everything that's associated on that parkland.
And there would be naming on the sponsor, so it could be Target Field for 3 years.
Yep.
But not naming rights. You know what I mean?
It wouldn't be target forever.
It could be for that 3 years.
Yeah.
Which, like you said, keeps money flowing in for maintenance, replacement of turf, whatever it is. But this complex would be like one naming right. And then the other naming stuff would be sponsorships, which is what Wassa does. Playground, field, well, there's a complex, but
Cause we would sell several sponsorships. The outfield, we'd have to determine how many, but, right, it would be likely more than one if we did banners or.
and baseball would sell those, and softball would sell those.
Okay.
I mean, they do it right now. So if you come to the field in the summer, we got sponsorship banners all across the outfield of all the diamonds. It was approved here.
Right.
And they make the funds, they get the funds from those advertising. It's just advertising though. It's not really, naming or sponsors.
Right.
It's just advertising. And it's cheap. You guys charge way less than shit. I know that.
So then-
Based on what
I
I've.
believe it's 300.
For the fields, then we would only sell one sponsorship per field.
I would think so.
Okay. That was my misunderstanding that they handled that in the outfield, so.
So how, besides a banner or whatever, how are we recognizing the sponsors?
So they have actual plaques or something they put up by each location that's sponsored and it stays up for that 3 years. Which I think is a great idea.
There was like an interchangeable sign here or something that
Yeah.
caught my eye.
I mean, that'd be something like for baseball, you'd probably put on the backstop, and it'd be known as, field 1 is say Target Field. Field 2 is Pick and Save, Field 3 is Ace or whatever.
Or even
So I
if
just
it
brought
was
it up.
maybe by concessions or something.
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know?
So field 1 and then a logo, which is a field sponsorship. So each field. They have full size,
Yeah.
intermediate.
And the signs could slide in and out.
Correct, yeah.
Yep, and you can change them all.
I like that idea.
So those are field sponsorships. They do have obviously the complex or the facility naming and playground also. But they do, put something out there for each field as far as sponsor. Name mentioned for sponsor, field on maps, online presence. Recognition as a sponsor and activity guides. So they recognize them in multiple different ways.
I think they got a fairly decent.
But we already do the field, so we're just.
We don't really do the fields though. That's advertising and then they're. Right now, Jones 1 and 2. But is that gonna continue? Is a big question.
Well, I think if somebody's willing to pay to put their name on it, they.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think the Jones 1 and 2 is in perpetuity. We don't know what was actually contributed. It was during a previous administration. I can't find anything as far as what was actually donated. Besides a good man that did a lot for baseball and you know, he was recognized because
So the field names are gonna be interchangeable? Or what do you?
I think the sponsor,
Or
fields will
the
still be-
sponsor name is going to be interchangeable.
yes, I think it'll
3
still
years.
be field 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But it'll be, for this 3 years, it'll be target field.
Well, that's really confusing to grandma and grandpa though. 'Cause
Just tell them to go
what
to
field
field.
are they
just
at?
tell them
They're
to go
so
to
used to
field-
Jones 1 or Jones 2.
Just tell them to go to
right
field
now.
number 1.
I'm just
Right.
putting, because she texted me on the way to the game and I,
And she
it
knew,
was
where-
Jones 1 or Jones.
and she knew where to go,
Yes.
field number 3.
I just told her the same, actually.
Yeah.
the same
well,
field
He always
as
plays,
I
he always plays on the big field in Newburgh.
I guess, yeah. But,
I'm just, that's just
Yeah.
me. I mean,
no, I think
You
it's
can do what
I
you
think
want,
yeah,
but I
it's a
think
great idea.
numbering of the fields stay the same,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, 'cause
It's
I
a
would say
great
if
way to
we-
generate money.
We change it all the time. I mean,
Right.
as you said, as grandparents can get kind of confused.
Yeah, they're confused anyways, it's fine.
Watch it.
I think as long as you
Just
have.
look for the gold shirts.
I mean, we have pretty minimal signage right now saying which field is which, so I think, you know, whatever we do, I mean, you go to some of these larger complexes. There's, you know, little maps and arrow boards and you get, it becomes fairly clear, like, where am I going, which field is which? And, you know, hopefully it doesn't change a whole lot, right? Somebody's like, yeah, I sponsor for 3 years, I wanna sponsor again for the next 3 and 3 after that and. Or we get a bidding war and we go, all right.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I guess maybe that's a question, like if you end up with 6 people that, or 6 sponsors, 6 people that wanna sponsor. And you only have 5 fields, how does that work, do you know? First come, first
I
serve?
would say first come, first serve.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a deadline.
Right, don't say, whoever gets it there before.
First come, first serve would be funds received.
Yeah.
And then we would say, but we happen to have
All these other options.
these other things.
Yeah.
Would you like to be the pool sponsor for the year?
Skate park.
Yeah.
I had to bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's not here to bring it up, so I brought it up. So it's your thoughts we want though, like. I think the field numbering would stay the same. You'd have a map, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And then
There you go.
if we change the map on an annual basis or every 3-year basis. You would put
Update the
that name, you know, who the sponsor is of that field. I mean,
And we would have an interchangeable sign like that.
yeah,
That was shown, yeah. That's a good idea. But we don't have to make a
it was
motion,
discussion,
and
you
then.
see no action,
Okay.
just trying to get ideas on
Mhm.
what you want incorporated. Cause, you know, and we tried to grab local stuff, not,
Mhm.
cause there wasn't not a lot. Jamie actually emailed Stevens Point to get that one. Bird Falls was online. I emailed, Wassa, Marathon County for theirs. Just so we had some local ones. Cause everything I searched was on the West Coast.
Hmm.
You just do a search online, Washington, Oregon shows up. We have a ton of it, but there's a ton of money out there too, you know, so.
Yeah.
And I think it was River Falls, so they had like US Bank Stadium and they had their naming rights policy, which is like I said, Nike versus Weston.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Kind of like Wolsel's for the marketing. We're not Nike,
Right.
but you know, we wanted a good assortment of items to look at. And there's long policies and there's short policies out there. I like 4 pages versus
Indeed.
20. Yeah, you see Wassa ball diamond fence banner,
Yeah,
you know,
right, I mean, I like how Wassa has theirs laid out.
and we could sell them versus baseball, because you're really trying to raise money to maintain the field.
Right,
You know what I mean, like, it's talking to baseball and saying, hey, you're doing 300 a year. We're gonna do $800 for 3 years, and it's guaranteed, not just year to year, you know? And the goal, as far as baseball, is maintain the field. Because where does most of the money go? Maintain the field, you know? They have registration money for uniforms, equipment, etc. But
I guess, again, question, does this become a Friends of Kennedy Park revitalization project, item that they spearhead, or is it a park thing? I know, us as, village staff, there's only so many of us, and, as we kind of talked throughout this project, when the government comes to a business and says, hey, we want you to donate
Right.
money, people aren't always warm and fuzzy, but when you go, hey, I'm trying to raise money for my kids, baseball team, hockey team, softball team, people tend to be like, oh yeah, let me go sponsor that. So I think as we look at this, maybe it's just the guideline of how it works. I mean, with the East Bay complex or the People State Bank complex, the soccer complex in Wausau, I mean, it's at least known, I guess, that so if the county comes to you, people understand what it is they're sponsoring. And hopefully that's what Kennedy Park turns into, is people go, yeah, I know what I'm sponsoring. I know I'm not just sponsoring the village of Weston and the government. I'm sponsoring this great rec opportunity and all these families and kids, so. But I guess maybe we're getting in the weeds a little bit on
it's a
that.
great point, and I think if we can keep that group going in the future, they are the fundraising arm. Not us asking for money. Like,
Yeah.
if we keep that group together, I think, and we've talked about it, I think there's an agreement that has to be made between us and youth softball, youth baseball, just what future contributions will be. Because we know we can't do it on our own as a village, and we need all these groups committed. And if they make that commitment, it goes beyond their boards, their president, into the future, because it changes constantly. I mean, Jimmy's the president right now, but 2 years ago it was Roman, or 2 years ago it was Jamie, and it changes, leadership changes. Kids move on, age on, and, move up to school baseball, so.
But Jim has an 8-year-old, so we have that going. for
Yeah,
us.
he's there for a while. Michael's there even longer, so.
Yeah, mine's 7.
Michael's already been there for 4 or 5.
Yeah, too long.
Running it through the Friends group too would make the contributions charitable in nature, and facilitating it through the village, they wouldn't be charitable in nature, so that would be another advantage. I mean, certainly knowing we would help facilitate and help put together. I mean, maybe we, as part of our agreement, if it's feasible with G Morty, he could do our first draft of the sponsorship form, and then we would have the document sort of created with the similar colors and style to fundraising stuff.
I think you brought up a good point there too, Sean. I know we've talked in general with some of our user groups over the years, as far as who has what. The first right of refusal, right, for field use reservations or some of those things. So I think I don't know what kind of formal agreement we have yet amongst all these groups, but when these items get built, I guess that's one of those things we need to make sure we kind of spell out a little bit as far as who gets what, I guess, right? Like
Or who coordinates.
who coordinates it? Yeah, who's in charge?
So, yeah, I told Michael this morning, I recently got contacted by somebody from softball, and I'm like, want to schedule some practice times on our field. Youth baseball sends in their requests for the fields for the season and dates, et cetera. And because they're all working together, I said, contact your league who coordinates through baseball for scheduling, because that's the cleanest way to do it, because you have the groups working together to coordinate those times, instead of me saying, yes,
You're the
no,
middleman.
yes, no.
Just let me check.
Yeah, so, I mean, and they're working together right now. And we talked pre-season about field availability for the other groups, all the groups, and when they would be available, et cetera. We're working with the school, you know, on number one at Kennedy. So as long as they keep working together, because they do most of their scheduling online too. I mean, I was a coach for 9 years, like literally, you just go in there and schedule your practice time if there's available time. If there's not, you move it to a different day or a different time, et cetera. And I mean, if there was one master calendar, which there is, that everybody had access to, that is ideal. You know, but do we have to coordinate that? We stopped doing that in 1996. When Green Neck went up, we used to coordinate all of it. And then, you know, they opened Green Neck and got community services department, and they started doing all the youth leagues. Took care of everything.
So we have some sort of outline, right? And then I like your idea with, since we've approved G Morty, to have them go ahead and get a sponsorship form for the Community Foundation meeting on the 28th.
Yeah, like I said, so, baseball, for all the groups, whoever's gonna be involved has a meeting. Community Foundation on 28th of May. And, you know, as much information as they could have for a presentation, the better. So sooner we can get something in place with G Marty, and, you know, then they're ready to go. I mean, because they're chomping at the bit to go. I mean, and
And we get 15 minutes. It's
Yeah,
a
15, 20
15-minute
minutes.
Zoom call
and
so
and I mean, I reached out to all the groups because I said,
do I have our
who are
ducks
your
in a row?
connections? Because we don't have the same connections as them. So there could be somebody at baseball that is a great grandson of a Greenheck or a Turner, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
I don't know those connections.
right,
So we need all the groups to be involved because they have different connections.
right, absolutely.
You know, I mean, I don't know all of them. I mean, we've gotten donations from Sunday that owns County Concrete. But there's definitely somebody that's closer to them than me, and I'm not asking.
Right.
So, we need them to reach out to them, those connections they have, but we need to have that information, not just the master plan and the costs.
Yep.
Like, sell our story, our strategy, and put the kids in front. Because what happened in that meeting? We had 4 kids out front. And that was the selling point. You were here, Barb, you were here, those 4 kids sitting up front.
In uniform.
Yeah. Like I said, that's
It
the
was only
story.
3 kids. They were so cute, they multiplied.
But I mean, that is literally, you know, who does this affect? And, you know, what does it do for the community? That is a huge story. If you put 500 kids in this room and said, are those donors? Better than me standing
Can't
there.
say no to that.
I think we've
I like
got
that.
some good guidance to put something together for
Okay.
next meeting, at least a draft.
Are we okay to move forward?
Yep.
Okay. Future items, number 9, possible next meeting, May 27th, 2024. Number 10, topics for future meetings, playground border proposals, Kennedy Park construction, document proposals. Any remarks from staff?
So the RFP is out there for the playground borders right now. We also have the remaining 4 playgrounds out on Wisconsin surplus. You should have all gotten those emails. So we expect proposals back for playground orders, and removal by June 3rd. I'll send you an email today stating that all structures are completed. 5 semi-loads of playground structures that are set to come in this week or next week. Jamie's clapping her hands. She's excited to see all this. I am too.
I'm
And
just sitting there thinking, where are they going with all that?
it's all coming here.
I
It's all gonna be
know.
stored back here. Our street staff started working on removal of the structures at Kennedy on Thursday last week.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that one's currently closed with signage and caution tape. So we have till the 6th of May. So I said, we have some time, even though I was like, Michael, they didn't work on it Friday. Michael, they didn't work on it today. I know we have time.
To tomorrow.
And they're fast, so I shouldn't be that worried, but I'm trying to keep it on track. The roof repair started today at Montmuller, which I sent you the picture. And I mean, talking to that person actually taking care of the repairs, very confident that he's like, this is good.
Yeah.
He's like, this is good. He'll also be the one working at the pool here shortly.
Would that have deteriorated in such a, that spot?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, so there's no drip edge on the roof. So when the water comes down the roof, it just runs down the front.
Absorbs into the concrete.
Yeah,
Concrete
and that's where
breaks
that's where the rebar is closest to the edge, is on that front side. So they're like, if it would have dripped off instead of running down the front, it wouldn't make its way into the concrete to the rebar that actually gets rusty and then starts falling apart. So,
I mean, it was just a spot. It was not.
and that's, they started with the small one, see how it goes, and then they're gonna move to Sand Hill, which is the bad one. So I talked to him for quite a while today just to verify how things are going there. But it looks good based on the picture, I just went out there and took. And once they're complete with their repairs, they're gonna pressure wash the entire roofs, and then they're gonna seal the whole thing. So should be all set to go. And something in the future, we'll look at the other 5 units we have, to do that too, to maintain them. Except for the one at Kennedy, because that one's supposed to get upgraded here for the next how many years, so. And we'll get the construction documents out, the RP out, and see something shortly on that.
Remarks from committee members,
Nothing.
announcements? Should we have a motion to adjourn Parks and Rec meeting? Motion by Clark, second by Ermeline. Motion's been approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any more in discussion? Parks and Rec meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, look at that.
Well,
You got your game in.
yeah, now I have to go get them. There's no shelter.
And the second game started at 5:30.